Has Riot lost faith in esports? We got a lot to talk about with the layoffs that happened last week. FlyQuest, is the bot lane a problem? Lots to talk about. Week two was give us lots and lots to talk about. TSM, are they even more dead? We'll get into that in quick news. All that and more in episode 150 of the Clown Fiesta podcast with Blue Jay and JNT 250. Big apologies for being late this week. Some things came up. We're getting it done now, and so we apologize for the people that wanted the morning Monday podcast. But here it is, Jinter. People are already aware of the 530 rioters or whatever the number is that were let go, and they're aware that there was like 11% of staff let go. But I think there's more of an esports discussion to be had around this. Um, just a year ago, there was the Travis Gafford interview that he did with John Needham, and at that time, I remember John saying that like there were some things to be worried about in the short term, but in the long term, they were very excited. And then that's where there was discussion about that Riot esports network or whatever the hell they wanted to do. All this to say that even though they acknowledged there was going to be short term issues, there was no sign that they were going to be laying off a bunch of staff and that they were, for example, the LEC losing 27 staff for the LEC product. LCS staff, I don't know the exact numbers, but I know there's LCS staff being laid off. How concerning is this to you?
I mean, it's just a little bit funny when you go back and you watch that interview because I did rewatch the interview yesterday, kind of just because of the recent announcement of the layoffs and the various projects that are being scrapped and or toned down. And it really, like I said, it's kind of funny when you look back on the perspective of it, where the outlook for the most part from John Needham was relatively positive. While he did acknowledge that there might be some issues in the short term, he seemed pretty convinced that they weren't going to be issues in the mid and long term. That's literally exactly what he says. We do not foresee these being issues in the mid and long term. And I think that 1 year removed basically from that interview now, I think it's more like 10 months, but Riot
Yeah.
has just announced that they're laying off 11% of their staff. And I'll tell you what, that energy of removing 11% of your staff or laying off 11% of your staff did not fit the energy of what he was giving off in that interview 10 months ago.
And anytime you hear them get like excited, like we're so excited for the future, you always take it with a grain of salt, right? I'm sure we're all aware that like, yes, this is still like a Riot talking head where he's going to give some PR answers and say we're excited about this and we're excited about that. So like just because he was excited about the future of esports didn't exactly get me all fired up. But even though I know that like he just says those things, I'm still like kind of scared with where this has gone because in that interview, yes, he says he's excited, but there was no sign that shit was going to get this bad this quick. I don't know how many people work on the LEC, but when I heard 27 people were being laid off, that sounds like a big chunk. And then Shock said something to the effect of it's going to be like more bare bones. Like, did they not just build a brand new studio for the LEC? Maybe Valorant plays there as well. I'm kind of ignorant on these facts, but the studio that I'm watching LEC in does not look like the old one, so something changed.
I mean, the other thing you have to consider is when you take a look at the list of the people who were unfortunately let go from the LEC broadcast, it was a lot of more higher up people as opposed to just random, you can eliminate these positions. Like it was the executive producer of the broadcast got removed, a bunch of the like ops team, which were involved in doing like the spectating and the replays and whatnot. Like 2/3 of the whole spectating and observing team has also been cut. There's one guy apparently doing like like running the spectator client. And at least from the minimal amount of LEC that I saw this past weekend, I probably watched about maybe 6 or 7 of the 15 games. It did seem like there wasn't as much production being thrown into it as normal. And not to say it looked bad or anything, because it didn't look bad. It looked pretty normal for the most part. But you definitely didn't see that normal high production quality that you do see from a league like the LEC, because they've pretty much been the leaders, if leader, if not leaders, in kind of creating this entertainment broadcast when it comes to League of Legends.
Yeah, like I want to acknowledge also that like there is a world where this is part of the plan and like where John said, we're kind of worried short term, but we expect like maybe part of the plan this whole time was to lay off people. But I just don't see that as being the case. The thing that has me worried about the future of Riot Esports is they revamped the LCS studio into the Riot Games thing where Valorant plays and LCS plays, right? So like they're investing in North America, they invest in Europe, as we just said, they redid the European thing and then so quickly they pull the Uno reverse card on themselves and they're like, let's lay off here, let's lay off here, let's lay off there, let's lay off there. And yes, I know a lot of the staff is not just within the esports realm, but a lot of it is. So that's what's got me worried about like what is going on at Riot. And I don't know, maybe have you heard of anything that like would give you um confidence that everything's going to be okay? I haven't heard
Well,
John speak since all of this stuff. Have you? I haven't seen anything like that.
there's a couple quotes from the statement that was released when this announcement
Yeah.
came out that I think are pretty important to note, and I'm going to read them off just so people who maybe haven't read the statement
Yeah,
can
go
hear
ahead.
these because I think they're the three most important quotes of what's been told to the public from Riot. Number
Mhm.
one, with regards to the layoffs, um, this isn't to appease shareholders or hit quarterly earnings numbers. It's a necessity. That's number one. Number two, over the past few years, Riot has more than doubled in headcount, and we've spread our efforts across more and more projects without sharp enough razors to decide what players needed most. And third, says with today's moves, we're going back to putting games at the center of everything we do. And what
That last one there, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that in terms of the actual game's perspective, the only significant changes are being made to both Legends of Runeterra and Riot Forge. You know, for the most part, the various teams on League of Legends, Valorant, Wild Rift, Project L, Project F, you know, all the unreleased games, those for the most part they said are staying intact, but it's Legends of Runeterra, the card game for people who don't know, and then Riot Forge, which has done all the single player games, which are pretty much getting axed very hard. I mean, Riot Forge has been completely eliminated now. The Bandle Tale game is going to be the last game that they release under this name. And in Legends of Runeterra, they basically said is kind of going to shift towards a single player PvE type style. It's not really going to, the focus of the game is not going to be the card game where you're playing against another person. It's going to be the single player mode.
Yeah. Um, when it comes to those quotes that you read, I feel like a lot of people will read the first one, like this isn't to appease the shareholders one, and be like, yeah, f you, I don't believe you at all, and I'm not buying it. And I think that's one of the things that will bother people the most. And I totally get that. I'm kind of bothered by that statement too because I don't know how much I want to believe it. But the one that bothered me the most is the third one, which is like with today's moves, we're going back to putting games at the center of everything we do. Like maybe I'm just too worried about esports and I'm like, does that mean they're moving away from esports? Like, I don't know how to interpret that. And it's always hard to interpret these things anyways because it always feels so PR speak. I don't really like Riot has kind of lost everyone's trust when it comes to any kind of statement of any kind. Like, I just don't know how much to believe them. Same thing goes with the interviews that John and Nas do. Like, they always have a way of wording things that like it just doesn't give me a lot of faith. And that last one saying that we're putting games back at the center we do is like a very interesting twist that sounds good. Like we're getting back into games. That's what we do. But like if you move resources away or if you put more resources into games, for example, and you're laying off a bunch of staff, doesn't that mean it has to come from esports? And it kind of seems like that's the case when you're getting rid of all the staff that we talked about in esports already.
Yeah, it's probably going to enter. I mean, we're kind of are in. I mean, esports winter has been a thing that people have been talking about for almost 2 years now. Maybe we're kind of coming up on the 2 year mark, but basically, sort of since the mid to end of 2022, that's when a lot of the esports winter talk has sort of surfaced, and it feels like we're really now seeing some of the effects of that. And I guess to go to the second quote because I thought that was kind of the typical Riot situation is
Hmm.
we spread our efforts across more and more projects without sharp enough razors to decide what players needed the most. That is literally the Riot classic of just trying to do too many things at once, but not fulfilling all of those tasks to completion. You know, even before Riot sort of, you know, there was a Riot 10-year anniversary and they released all the new games and provide all the new teasers for the games. When they were just doing League of Legends things, like I'm talking like from seasons 5 up to 9, basically, it was the Riot classic to release some sort of something in the client, a new game mode, anything that wasn't directly game related. And then it would last and it would stay at the forefront for about 1 year until it would quietly go away. And then there'd be an announcement saying, oh, yeah, we're removing this. It's done as a project. And I feel like that's kind of exactly what we're seeing here. Riot, you know, rightfully so in the upswing of their company. And as they mentioned themselves, they doubled in headcount. They probably got this idea that they were going to be able to do all these various things because all their games were popping up so hard. And you've kind of just, we've reached that point where we sort of regress back to the mean a little bit. And Riot is probably just basically, they're kind of like at this wow moment. It's like, oh, we're involved in too many things and have too many people to do these things. And as they said it themselves, that they didn't have a clear focus or vision. And I think that's sort of what the point that we're at now is they've realized that, hey, we need to kind of refocus and figure out what exactly we want to do because we've kind of been blowing through some resources potentially over the last few years.
Yeah, and until someone from Riot comes out and says that they're still like planning on investing in the long-term side of esports, until that happens, and even if that happens, I still don't know if I'd have faith, but until that happens, I'm not going to have faith in the long-term investment into esports because the last time that they said that they were bullish or whatever the hell term he said, he might have said that he's bullish long term with esports. The last time he said that, shit was very, very different, even though it was just 9 or 10 months ago. Like shit changed so much within that time that it's like, if you're John Needham and you are still feeling that way and you still feel like Riot is going to invest in esports in the long term, you should probably come out and say that pretty quick. But
Well, and
even like I said, even if he does, people might not even believe it, and I don't blame him for that.
as I mentioned, this interview was done in April or March of 2023. And at that time, there was a lot of discussion going on around, LCS teams potentially selling their spot. And this was even before the announcement and the reveal that basically two teams were going to depart the LCS and they were going to downsize from 10 to 8 teams. And even in that interview, before all of this happened, despite the obvious concerns about the constant cycle of hearing reports that teams are looking to sell their spots, once again, they were just they just basically told us that like, hey, we have confidence in the teams that we're working with, and then 6 months later, we find out that two teams are getting completely removed from the league. So I think I've said this multiple times. Like I've sort of lost the blind faith. Like a lot of people seem to have this blind faith in Riot when it comes to various things, when it comes to improving the LCS or the direction of the LEC, whatever's happening on with the game, these various interviews that come out with Riot, like I'm sorry, I've just lost giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah,
Like
I think that makes total sense to me.
there's just been too many things that have happened in succession since about 2018 for me to just keep rah rah, yeah, let's go Riot Games
Yeah.
with just blind faith.
True. You know what's so interesting about Riot Games is they can be such a good company when it comes to like the games they make. Like I know people are gonna hate when I say that, but because everyone, oh my champion got nerfed, shit game, balance team's trash, everything's trash, 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 trash. But like the games are good. People play the games and they play them a lot. The company's really good there. Everything after that, it feels like the company's really not good. Yeah, their messaging is bad. A lot of the decisions they make is bad outside of the games, and yeah, feel like there's a lot of reasons to dunk on Riot Games, the company, outside of the actual games themselves. And maybe they've been dunked on too many times that they're like, we're just gonna go back to making fucking games because clearly we make games that a lot of people want to play. Maybe that's their focus. I don't know, but as someone that loves esports, like we're esports guys, we love the fucking LCS. That's why we do this podcast. Not inspiring a lot of faith, you know?
Yeah, and it's obviously tough for the rioters themselves. There was a lot of them that pretty outspoken on various social medias that this was came as a big surprise to most. A lot of people
Yeah.
weren't expecting this. A lot of people were, kind of upset that they basically, their job and their current life and situation was basically down to receiving an email, whether or not their position had been eliminated or their services were no longer needed. And it just felt bad for all those various writers who were all over social media that last Monday, basically just saying like, I don't know what my future is. Like, once again, a little bit scummy from Riot seemingly pulling the rug from under their feet.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
like I
It's so
said from the
sad,
jump,
man.
this kind of was just something that came out of nowhere for the most part, especially when you consider the various language that Riot officials and higher ups have been using for the last 2 years. Because even and once again, I'll refer to the post that they themselves made. For the most part, they've been able to avoid these types of situations by being able to reuse other people in certain design teams and fashions and not have to have these sort of big mass layoffs. And like I said, it was probably just a point of they started trying to spread their wings too far in the last 4 years with the boom, and they're kind of kicking them in the ass now.
Yeah, no, that definitely seems like it might be the case. Before we move on and talk about all of the LCS teams and week 2 of the LCS, if you want to support this podcast, it's very easy to do that. Jinter, how can they do that?
Click the like button, click the
Yeah,
subscribe button.
That's a big one.
The follow button, maybe if you're on Twitch. I don't know. The leave a comment. We respond
Comments
to
are
the
good.
comments. We read the comments. You want to flame us? Flame us. We'll flame you back.
J&T's been doing more replying than I have, but I have been reading the ball regardless. We read them all. So yeah, just make sure to sub, guys. It helps us tremendously. And like you said, comment, like all that stuff. And also remember, we are on different podcast platforms. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify. What are the other ones, Chinter?
Uh,
We're obviously on YouTube.
yeah, YouTube, Twitch. What other? What other? Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all them random podcasting platforms.
If you use one that's not those, I wonder what people are using. Anyway, oh, and also
Yes.
a big apology again that we didn't get it out for Monday. We always try to get our episodes available for Monday, and going forward, there's a chance that things change. I know this is going to be annoying and super vague, but like there's some issues that we're working with right now. Don't know if the next episode's going to come out on time. It's really going to be a play by ear kind of thing, guys. And I know I'm sorry to be vague like that, but that's just the way it's got to be. I guess I'll just say there's some health issues, but no one's dying. Okay, we'll leave it at that.
Just
Um,
give us your PMAs, your positive mental attitudes. That's all we
yeah,
need from you.
yeah. So hopefully we get our next episode out for Monday, and if we don't, we apologize. Okay, let's talk about the LCS. Week 2 happened. We're gonna start with the 3-1 teams. Yes.
Yeah, we got a bit of a tango at the top here now with all of C9 Energy and FlyQuest sitting at a record of, and there's a bit of like not necessarily like a full triangle going on, but there's a little bit of a triangle considering that Cloud9 beat NRG and NRG beat FlyQuest, although C9 have yet to play FlyQuest, but we're kind of at this point now where we're a third of the way through the season because the season is so short now, and we got 3 teams tied for the top one. I think going into last week, or I guess, sorry, before the week happened, everyone was kind of considering Cloud9 as the clear cut number one, and that was kind of end of discussion. And maybe now it's not as clear.
I don't think that's gonna change. Um, The one thing that I thought was interesting is I think I remember saying Cloud9 and FlyQuest are supposed to play each other this week coming up, and we thought that it would be undefeated versus undefeated, or we thought there was a good chance that it was 4-0 versus 4-0 going into the week, but that's clearly not the case. Both of them dropping games. I still have Cloud9 as the clear cut favorite. I don't think that's a hot take. I think people will agree with that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they're still the favorite in my eyes. Obviously, I don't think that has changed. I would, however, say that it's maybe closer than I thought it was. I'll say that.
And just because of the Shopify game, like that's the only game that they lost, or
I
was
mean,
it? Who
yeah.
else did they play? They played Dig and Shopify this week. Was there anything in the Dig game that had you a little bit more like, oh
No,
shit?
no, not really. But I think it was also more so just that energy just smacked FlyQuest up and down the street. Like that was, I thought, what was most impressive about the whole weekend.
Hmm. Um. Was there any performances from the play? Okay, actually, let's talk about the Vayne thing. Can we talk about Vayne mid? Did you
I
like the Vayne
liked it.
mid? I thought, yeah, I liked
I
it
liked
too,
it.
honestly, especially for the Let 'Em Cook award.
It seemed pretty clear cut that when Shopify saw Cloud9, because I think the way that it went was Shopify went Udyr first pick, and then Cloud9 responded with Aatrox Callista. And basically from the jump, it seemed to me that Shopify was under the assumption that Cloud9 was then going to pick an AP mid laner. And
Hmm.
there had been a little bit of talk going into this patch that the play is actually to run tanks mid lane, rushing Kanik Rukern or uh, some of the other newer tank magic damage items because those items are so strong. Like, and not just the magic items, like you have items like Frozen Heart, which can easily counter, AD junglers, ADCs, and top laners. But tanks mid were kind of something that we're brewing going into this next patch. Obviously, LCS being played on the live patch, we get to see those things first. So it wasn't necessarily surprising that they locked into Sound because I thought the plan that Shopify had was pretty good with what Cloud9 was showing so far in the draft. Like when they go Aatrox Callista, you're thinking that, hey, they're pretty much going to resort to an AP mid laner. And I thought that as well. So I thought the Scion mid pick was actually pretty good. But
Yeah,
then
it's just
Cloud9
both
decided to
mid laners
throw,
cooking.
yeah, then Cloud9 decided to throw a little spanner in the works. And instead of picking an AP mid laner, picked the Vayne mid, which I still thought was a really good answer to the Scion. However, um, other circumstances prevented the Vayne from doing a whole lot that game. That included one, Fudge having another bad game. I'll keep calling it as I see it. Fudge is
What do you
not.
mean another? You mean another in reference to last year, how he had bad games? Because I
Yeah,
thought he played good up until that game. Okay,
yeah.
because
In
for me,
reference to
it's 3
last
good
year.
games, 1 bad one for Fudge. That's the way I'm looking at Fudge.
I don't know if I mean obviously he's not. They're not bad games because like Cloud9's winning games, but he's not doing anything so special to where he's making them win. Like the in the first week of the LCS, I thought Fudge did his job for Cloud9 to win.
That's what you want from a top laner a lot
Yeah.
of the time, though, right? Like I was gonna say especially Cloud9, but they kind of play around different places, so it's not always like that. But like just any top laner, all you want is for them to do their job. And I would argue last year Fudge wasn't necessarily doing his job. So to me, I'm much more like I'm buying in on the Fudge getting back to where he was. Although I will admit that that game was a hiccup that like, not a big fan of that. But I have more faith in Fudge now than I did coming into the season. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, and the jury's still out on that. You know, I still have yet. I've yet to form a concrete opinion about how I feel about Fudge this season, but I would say that
Damn. Last
like
year really put skeptic JNT
they
mode
did
on,
well,
yeah.
because I mean, we don't have to go down the whole Fudge rabbit hole here, but the whole point towards the positive points towards Fudge was that he was playing very well domestically, and that he also would go to these international tournaments and also play very well. Think back to MSI 2021, Worlds 2021. Fudge was probably the best player on his team at international events in all of 2021, and then obviously he had a really rough 2022. You know, didn't C9 didn't play very well. No, sorry, they didn't end up going to MSI. C9 didn't play well at Worlds. Fudge was getting smacked by who was in their group? Flandre, Wonder, and Zeus. 2023 kind of gets smacked around at international events again. Doesn't have a strong summer
Yeah.
split. Gets annihilated by Dokla in summer finals. So telling you, like we got to pump the brakes here. But like
I I'm
I'm
with you.
taking like maybe this is a hot take. I'm taking Rich over Fudge all day. Like I'm
Um,
taking Rich over Fudge all day.
that might be a little bit of a spicy take because Rich was very hit or miss last year in summer. Like, he had a really good start and not such a good end. But I don't hate that take, but I do
Like you put him
disagree with it.
on C9 and it's a big difference. I'll
The
tell you that.
the stuff that I do agree with is the international competition starting in 2022 is where Fudge started to get a lot of criticism. And I guess the only issue with that, so while I completely agree with you, is the only issue is that he can't prove himself internationally for some time now, right? Like I guess he's in a spot where like he can't prove himself because there's nothing that he's going to do in the LCS that's going to have you be confident in Fudge, right?
No,
Because the big
there
thing
is
with
that.
Fudge is
I would say that's not true.
okay.
The thing that would give me the most confidence is him playing like the best top laner in the league, like he did
Mm,
in 2021, the early parts of 2022, and I guess spring split 2023. Like
okay.
when you're the best top laner in your region, like that is cause for praise and be like, okay, this guy's playing very very well. But and I'll say it again, Fudge was a mediocre top laner last split in summer 2023, mediocre at best.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you're right.
And I haven't seen anything to the contrary so far this year to make me believe that he has made the jump back to being best in his role.
Fair
I've yet to
enough.
see maybe he is and he can show that, but I have yet to see that in the first 4 games.
Yeah, you want to see it before you believe it. No problems with that. Okay, so back to the Vayne thing. We both liked the Vayne. To me, that game pretty much just went off the rails. Like I agree that
The
Fudge didn't
bot
have a
lane
good game, but
dive. The bot
yeah,
lane
exactly.
dive.
The
That's
Maokai dive bot lane is where
sorry to go on a
everything went
fudge
wrong.
tangent, but yeah, the bot lane dive is where it went really horribly wrong.
Yeah, and so as the Cloud9 fan, can't like I feel like you could probably cope with that, right? And just be like, that's just a botch dive that happens. Like that really put the whole game, it turned the game upside down as to what they wanted to do. So like can you walk away from that game coping, or is it still like, I don't want them losing to Shopify because Shopify was really struck. They were 0-3 at that point. So like, are you coping being like, it's fine, or Shopify was 0-3, they were really struggling, and I don't want Cloud9 losing to a team that couldn't win a game yet.
I mean, I guess technically I'm still coping because I don't
Mm.
like they kind of lost from their own mistakes. Really, I mean, the only place where I guess I would argue that they didn't lose just because of pure mistakes was top lane. Or sorry, Fake God was just playing good.
That is definitely the cope. They only lost because they like made mistakes.
I mean,
Like,
when you try to dive bot lane and it's a like you're diving bot lane 3v2 and then all 3 players die without getting any kills in return, and then you then lose the next fight around second like grub spawn. It's kind of cursed.
I'm still with you because like one mistake like that completely flips the game. I would be in cope mode as well. Like I'm not worried about Cloud9. Like I said, I still think they're going to be the best team. But also at the same time, you kind of got to give credit to the other side. There was the Melio that knocked them back when they were diving. That was like perfectly done. So like I do think it was well played from Shopify's side of things as well.
But I
Even if
mean,
I think Cloud9 should pull off that dive, you got to give credit when the other team does something good too.
yeah, but I mean, when Maokai is like sprinting it down, drops the aggro with his W, Berserker does not cleanse, like does not get out of the Varus ulti that gets thrown at him. Like Blabber doesn't flash the Varus ulti. Like it's just cursed all around.
It was an interesting game. Should we go over to NRG or FlyQuest?
NRG, we gotta put some respect on who he's named. I know this guy, he's just a fun guy, likes to laugh all the time, but hey, when the laughing comes out, that means the enemies are dying.
Yeah, I
So
fucking love who he.
yeah, we gotta peep the NRG comms once again to hear who he having a grand old time laughing. However, I think we need to sort of ask the question. We've talked about this podcast many times when we're talking about the support position. There's, since the earlier parts of Core JJ's career and even Vulcan's career in the LCS when they were clearly the two best supports in the league, they haven't
Mhm.
been necessarily at the top of their game in the last, year and a half to 2 years. And I think we got to say,
Agreed.
like, is who he is who he there with them, or has he overtaken them? Because I think I would argue at the very least who he is right there with them for being best support in the league. You look at who he's career, and ever since he joined Golden Guardians in summer, I guess it was summer of season 9 when he originally paired with FBI on Golden Guardians. He's been top 4, top 3 in the league ever since, basically.
I'm definitely okay with saying so far into the season who he's been the best support. I'm okay with that because I don't think Vulcan's been spectacular. I don't think Busio's been spectacular. Usually, you look towards the top of the standings and which supports are going to be. I honestly, we'll get to Ayla later, but I actually thought Ayla's been looking pretty good. So like, there's other guys to talk about. I don't want to classify who he in that level of like hands down best support because like to me it's up for grabs right now. I don't think the Vulcan that we had of like 2 years ago or the Core JJ that we had of like 3 or 4 years ago. I don't think who he's playing to that level, but I do think that like he definitely deserves some respect and like I don't think the discussion of best support should be exclusive to Vulcan or Core JJ anymore. I honestly think both of those players have kind of fallen off, and the best support is up for grabs. And
I,
I
I
think who he is currently the front runner.
Yes, I would agree that who he hasn't reached those high highs that we saw from the likes of Vulcan and Core JJ in the span of like 2019 to 2021. But I would argue that he has already overtaken Core JJ and Vulcan for best
Ooh.
support.
Oh,
Because
okay,
I
yeah,
mean,
that
you
part I
gotta.
agree.
Because I mean, even his career on 100 Thieves before he then went off 100 Thieves. I guess where did he was he? We was on 100 Thieves, and then did he come to NRG? Where did he go in between that? I can't even remember.
Golden
Now,
Guardians, he was there last year.
oh yeah, it was Stixay, of course. That's when the laughing
Did say
started.
who he.
How could I forget?
Yeah, yeah.
Anyways, but I remember there was a
Little
time
brain
on
fart.
there was a time on 100 Thieves where he was paired with FBI once again, obviously, and they were doing a lot
Mhm.
of the Senna combo type lanes, and you saw who he playing a bunch of stuff like they were playing Senna TK, Senna Set, they were playing some Senna Wukong. I believe there was even some Senna Lee Sin in there. And I just remember talking about Huhi and how he was basically the most versatile support. And you kind of look at the likes of Vulcan and Core JJ, and you kind of wonder, like, Core JJ has kind of been known as this engage, hook style champion. And ever since the Enchanter meta has been around for, I guess, the last year and a half now, hasn't looked as good. And honestly, same with Vulcan. There seems to be a clear difference from champions of Thresh, Rakan, Alistar to your Milio, Renata, uh, Nami, Lulu type champions.
Yeah. But the all this to say that like who he deserves more respect, and I am totally down with that. That guy is, and you know what? You're going to get a lot of ints out of Huhi, and I think that's probably the reason why some people don't want to put him on that core or Vulcan level as far as like how good they were over those. Again, it's been a couple of years since, but you get that like upper echelon of like how good those supports were. I don't know if I want to put him there because there are some ints you do get who he running it down sometimes. We're all gonna remember the Zach game last year.
Oh yeah.
uh yeah. But
Maybe
I don't
maybe
know. I
not
think
one of those champion picks that we need to see again.
I want to see it again. I want to see him. All this to say, who he's good. He deserves the respect. What else happened with NRG this weekend? They
They had
played
a
100 Thieves and
they had a
Fly.
close game against 100 Thieves.
I don't even remember what happened in that one.
That was, I mean, once again, I feel like that's more of a 100 Thieves talk type of game, but I kind of said
We
it
could leave
from,
it for that.
yeah,
We can leave
I
it for
said
that.
it towards the beginning, but NRG smacked the fuck out of FlyQuest this week, and if we want to
Yeah,
start,
they did.
if anything, continue to continue to praise the bot lane of NRG because that's where the whole game revolved around. Obviously there was a level 1 skirmish that happened where Inspired was forced to sort of come down and hover the lane. NRG's bot lane still got a kill in the 2v3, then had the wave on their side of the lane, pushed it back out, brought Contracts down from after doing his topside clear, brought him to the bot side of the map, forced Inspired to sack his topside and cover the dive. They still died in the dive, then they did it again at level 4 or 5, then they literally did it again at like level 6. It was just over from minute 10, basically.
Yeah, I kind of want to turn this into an NRG and FlyQuest talk just because of that game specifically. So you mentioned the shit went down bot lane. It went their lane got frozen um in the favor of NRG, and it felt like NRG never let off the gas at all after that. If you're FlyQuest, and I'm a FlyQuest fan, I can cope being like, that's just like they played Energy, who's a good team. One little thing went wrong in lane there, which is I say a little thing. It is actually a pretty big thing where like being able to control your lanes. But like I think the problem is fixable. I didn't really have any issues with the rest of FlyQuest because like when your team's just getting smacked, you're gonna try to make shit happen. And yes, it's going to look worse when you're trying to make plays from behind. I didn't mind that too much. The question that we asked at the start of like, is FlyQuest bot lane going to be a problem? I still don't want to answer that yet. I think the answer is no, but like after they got so hard dicked against NRG this week, I like I kind of gotta hesitate on that, you know?
Yeah, it just mostly makes me concerned for the strong laning bot lanes that we have. And I think,
Yeah.
while I'll bring up Cloud9's bot lane, while they haven't looked the greatest necessarily, you just look at the individual skill from those two players and the games that we've seen out of them in previous years. Berserker and Vulcan can easily smack people up in lane. I've said this before. I think Yon and Core J are still probably the best laning bot lane duo. And when it comes to laning, just if we're talking laning only, throw a little bit of respect on Tactical and Ole. Like they're not bad at laning. Like
Yeah, they've been good so far this year.
like
I guess the concern is fair for FlyQuest bot lane because we just saw an example of how the bot lane can lose them a whole game. And I don't even want to pretend like the rest, like there weren't mistakes everywhere else. I didn't think Jensen had that great of a game. Jensen was kind of just free ganks mid. He died a
yeah.
couple of times mid. So like there's other issues, but the reason they lost that game is the bot lane. So I think there's a fair reason to start to concern yourself with their bot lane. I need to see more sample size before I'm like full panic button on the FlyQuest bot lane though.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm necessarily at a panic button yet. However, just looking at the first 4 games, I've yet to see any moments that have wowed me from the FlyQuest bot lane. They've just been similar to the Fudge conversation. They've just been doing their job. And
I
doing your
felt
job,
bad for
doing just
Inspired trying
just
to
doing
help
your
that bot
job
lane.
is fine up until where it starts affecting the rest of the map and the rest of the game, like it did in this NRG game.
Yeah. I really felt bad for Inspired trying to he kept going to make sure that his bot lane didn't get dove.
Well,
Um
the only mistake that he probably made was initially going bot, and I would say that that was just probably a result of the bot lane saying like, "Hey, we're getting into an all-in level 1 bot lane. If you come and clean them up, like it'll be really good for us." And unfortunately, that didn't happen. They actually got a kill in the 2v3. Inspired then fell behind and then had to cover the dive when it came 3 minutes later. And I think at that point, the CS in jungle, like not that CS in jungle is a big deal, but it's a big deal when it's like 48 to 16 or 42 to 16, whatever it was. I think it was like at level 4, level 5. Like Inspired was down 2 levels. Like the game is over from then. So I would say the only mistake Inspired made was listening to his own team when they were probably calling for him to come down at level 1. But from then on, like you basically had to go bot lane to cover dives because what are you gonna let? You're gonna let your bot lane lose 2 waves every single time you try to dive them, go 2 for 0, 2 for 1. Like you will never win the game like that. Like
it's very much doomed if you do, doomed if you don't type deal.
exactly. And it was clear just from the draft that they picked like Sejuani Darius. They wanted to be a top side. Like they wanted the focus to be top side. When you're
Yeah.
picking Darius Sejuani, that is like the green light where, hey, we're going top lane this game, and they just never were allowed. And Whippo obviously by the end of the game, it didn't look like he had a good game, but there was nothing he could do. Like Whippo
Yeah.
was just chilling. He was up 10 CS, like doing what he was supposed to do. The jungler was never able to gank his lane. Once Contracts found his way up there at like 10 minutes, when Bubba was trying to take an all in, he dies, and then he's fucked as well. So
And even though I kind of paint the picture that this is just one mistake bot lane that kind of screwed it all up, you need to give credit to NRG for not letting off the gas. Like I mentioned, like Contracts was permanently invading Inspired's jungle and just fucking with him the whole time. Inspired did not have a fun time that game at all, and so you got to give a lot of credit for the other NRG guys for using that advantage and not throwing it throughout the game. There was one dive that NRG did that like kind of went awry, but aside from that, there weren't really many mistakes. So like good sign out of NRG because week one it didn't look that great. Much better week two from NRG.
yes, looking good.
Uh, 2-2 teams.
Yeah, sorry, I'm late here. My bad.
That's okay.
But yeah, 2-2
Um,
teams. We got 100 Thieves and Team Liquid.
where are we starting
I,
here?
I want to start with 100 Thieves because we asked the question last week after they went 1-1.
Uh huh.
Are they ahead of schedule? And I think
Yep.
the early answer we were saying was yes. The team actually looks pretty good. Lots of praise to go around for this team. I'm going to start again with the guy who I mentioned first last week, which is River. If there were any questions about this guy being able to perform on a bad team, those questions have been answered. River is still really, really good.
100% true. And one of my reasons for doubting this team at the start of the year, which I'm still going to doubt them, by the way, just let me just get that out of the way. But one of the reasons for me doubting them at the start of the year was like, I didn't really have faith in a lot of the individual players outside of River. And I remember when River was on a bad team on Dig, like before he went to Golden Guardians, like River did not look good whatsoever when he was stuck with a bunch of noobs. I don't know what changed, but River is ganking everywhere, and it seems like it's really to their advantage to just gank heavy and make the game more of a fiesta, pun intended, rather than make the game about farming and getting advantages in prio and blah 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 blah. It's like, no, let's just fucking fight all the time, and maybe we can pick up some wins. And that's kind of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like they are hella aggro. They fight like crazy. And somebody else that I'm going to throw in the mix of like I'm just fighting, Quid. I don't think Quid has any understanding of when he's going to die. He's totally careless,
Yeah,
but
I
he
don't.
is looking to kill someone. Like
I don't.
that's what I got from this week is like Quid is going to engage and he doesn't give a fuck where anybody else is on the map. Quid might die going for the play, but he's going to go for the play and he might kill someone, he might just die, and I'm actually really enjoying watching Quid play for that reason. I think 100 Thieves is just like we're fighting, let's go. And I'm down for it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm as big a fan as Quid fighting, quote unquote. I don't know if I'd use the term fighting. I might use the term inting a little bit.
Well,
But I mean, I don't
potato
know.
potato.
Like if you asked me before, like if you showed me this week of LCS, and then I had to answer a question saying, "Do you think Quid has ever played against Vi before?" I'm telling you, I would have wrote no for the answer because I don't think this guy knows what the champion Vi does. Like, dude, I feel bad because like I flamed Quid all of last split, and I gave him some praise last week, but I got to flame him again this week. He That game against NRG was one of the worst Akali games I think I've ever seen.
I
The
didn't think it
dude,
was that bad, was
it
it?
what
Maybe I didn't look close
you,
enough.
you gotta look. You look again, and pretty much in the majority of fights, just watch Quid and see the boatload of nothing that he is doing. Um,
I
I don't know.
remember the
It
one
was
play
it
around
was
drag,
really
he
bad.
completely erased the Ash. Like he flanked a little bit in the blue jungle, and he just erased Ash off the start.
Tilt
Like
support
that's one of the
Ash.
things I
I
remember.
mean, cool.
I mean, still, you're still erasing someone. Like that is your job. Like taking Ash off the map is a good thing. Um, I maybe yeah, maybe I needed to focus more on Quid because again, I didn't think that Quid was amazing. I do think he's very flippy and he's just gonna fight.
I
So
think if you put a magnifying glass on this game and watch Quid only, you'll see how useless he actually was.
interesting. Maybe I'll have to watch more next week. I'm excited to watch. I didn't think I'd be excited to watch Hundred
But
Thieves, but I
okay,
am.
but here's the thing: I don't want to get negative because I actually think there's a lot to like about this team. You
Uh
gave
huh.
him a little bit of credit, in our earlier segment, but Ayla,
Yep.
dude looks like a much better version of the version that we saw last year on EG and FlyQuest.
Oh God, yeah.
Like he looks good. Meech looks really good.
I
River
like
looks
the
good,
recon.
and Sniper. Sniper looks good. Like everybody looks good except for Quid here, which I'm taking that as a win because going into the season, I was thinking that only River was going to be good, and then we were going to see some pop off moments from Sniper here and there, and I was like, oh, we need to be worried about the rest of the map, but I don't have those concerns. The only concern I have right now is mid lane, and I would say that that's a good thing.
I still have concerns in every lane, actually.
I,
Like,
I
don't get
thought
me
I
wrong, I
thought
thought Halo
snipers
looked
looked
good.
I thought snipers looked really good so far, and is it like
The first week, I don't think Sniper looked good. They came out of week 1, 1-1, right? So, like, and most people acknowledge that even though he got the Riven game, he still kind of just lost, which I guess was the matchup. So I hear he's supposed to lose that matchup, but like, still, he was getting picked off in side lanes as well, which is a very rookie thing to do. Like, I don't know if that happened in week 2 or not, but like, just because it didn't happen in week 2 doesn't mean it's not going to happen in week 3, 4, 5, 6, or whatever. I'm still a little bit nervous for Sniper, and I'm nervous for most of this team. Honestly, I'm still pretty doubtful on them, but I just have way more excitement watching their games because they go down with a fight. So I'm all for that. Let's fucking go.
they're definitely an exciting team because they do like to fight.
Can we classify them as scrappy?
I think so. They
We'll call
fit
them scrappy.
they fit the bill for that. I would maybe
All
like
right.
to maybe we can tone it back just a smidge,
I don't want to.
maybe a little more calculation on what we're doing.
What's okay? So other than scrappy, what are we going with?
I don't know, just like
We're
you know,
calling them scrappy. They're
let's
scrappy.
just not dive headfirst into the back line when there's a Vi ult and stuff going on like that. How about let's just recognize that they have a Vi presses R when you go in and they press R, you die. But
You
let's
do
think about
whatever
that.
your little heart wants. You dive that back line. Don't ever let
Or
J and TT50 tell you you can't do something.
at the very least, can we go? Can we buy a Zanya's second item like every other Akali does against Vi? Let's buy
We don't need
Zanya's
that.
second item. Let's not wait until fourth item to buy a Seeker's Arm Guard. Thank you very much.
Okay, and then TL on the other hand, I'm still like, I thought TL was gonna look better. I don't know what to say about TL. Um,
Honestly, I don't even know what to say about them either. There's 1 minute they're looking like the greatest team ever, and then in other minutes they're looking like the worst team ever.
okay, let's talk about Yon a little bit because I know you're a Yon guy, and I was it okay. Let me make sure I'm not confusing this with last week. This was the week where he had the Lucian game where like he shot W the wrong way and then he shot culling the wrong way, right?
Yeah, I mean his Lucian game was not very good. He also dashed melee range like 2 or 3 times in that game. Oh, like when it
Yeah.
was those big extended team fights. I don't know. I don't like that Yan is kind of becoming a bit of a Lucian one trick, and I know it kind of does play to their strengths of like they play the Lucian Nami because they're good laning duo and they usually win lane because of it. But every single time that we enter the team fight phase of the game with Yan playing Lucian, he's more often than not overstepping, and this time he doesn't kind of have the Gale Force to bail him out a little bit.
Hmm. Okay.
His Aphelios game was really good though. I thought that was good.
That was against Immortals.
I mean, it was against Immortals, but hey,
No,
we'll
that was a
take what
good
we can
game,
get.
honestly. So that made it sound like I was trying to discredit. That's not that's not what I was trying to do. I was just trying to remember what happened this weekend. The APA, he played. What
He
did he
played
play against Immortals?
Tristana.
I just remember he
He
kept.
played
You're
Tristana
right.
both weeks or
He
both
kept getting
games.
caught in the bard. He kept getting caught in the bard ulti against Olay, which
Hmm.
like sometimes he made it out though, or sometimes he died, but it just didn't matter, and TL would win the fight.
Yeah,
But like
he never got the jump golden stasis buffer, but apparently it's really hard to do. So at least that's what they were saying on the co stream. So
yeah, and I thought that he kind of just got destroyed by FlyQuest as well. You know what's funny? Do you remember when we were doing our predictions last week? Andrew pointed this out to me. I said something along the lines of like, picture Jensen shockwaving a little Yordle or whatever. But I said with bomb, so I clearly hinted at Ziggs. But it
mm.
wasn't that far off from Jensen playing Oriana into the Tristana in this case.
We
And
can give you a little bit of credit for that.
yeah, I'm gonna take some points
You
there.
get half a point.
Um, I wanted APA to close out the game more cleanly against Immortals when he got the early. He was 2-0 really early. He was farming great. He was taking turrets. I thought that he could have closed that game out more cleanly, but he's still very apt to getting picked off. Part of that, and we'll get to Immortals. Part of that is you got to give credit to Olay on the Bard, but still, like, I don't think he's very unsafe and dies a lot. So like
APA we're talking
that's
about,
going to
yeah,
be a problem. Yes.
yeah.
Did I say
Um,
somebody else?
no, I just had looked over him, was just making sure we're still talking about APA. Because I'm going to agree with you. Yes, his positioning still leaves a lot to be desired, and I actually thought in the TL FlyQuest game, I thought they abandoned the split push. I thought that was a mistake for them to abandon the split push strategy and try to fight 5v5 around that Baron pit. They were splitting up until that mega team fight, that like 2 minute long team fight happened at the Baron pit where like Jensen TP'd out of the fight to go answer AP in the sideline, and then APA TP'd into the Baron pit to try to join the fight. I thought up until then, like despite losing the soul, the game was still, I wouldn't say in Team Liquid's favor, but they still had kind of control of the game because they were dictating the tempo of the game via the side lanes. And I thought that once they abandoned the split push strategy, where they basically forced APA to TP to the Baron because they decided that, hey, we need to
Yeah.
fight this Baron because if we lose Baron, the game's over. And I can see that. But I just thought that they abandoned the split push when they really needed to not, because they were just simply winning in the side lanes for 10 minutes of the game up until that point.
I think I agree with you, and so I was listening to the co-stream, but you could sort of hear Azale, so I might be taking this from Azale if I heard him correctly. I think what he said was like TL decided to give up the drag to take the inhib because they felt like they couldn't 5v5.
Yeah,
And then it's like once you give over Ocean Soul, well now you definitely can't 5v5, right?
exactly. Like they
So
should have just
so
continued
that's
to
where
commit to the side lane.
yeah, that's what I think I heard Azale say, and that I completely agree with. And so I'm agreeing with what you're saying also is like, if you were going to commit to splitting, why did you commit to splitting? And then once you give over soul, suddenly we're like, oh, yeah, let's fight now. That makes no sense whatsoever. I honestly don't think that they should have given up Ocean Soul. I think once you do that, I don't think you can win the game. I think there's too much of a requirement to team fight nowadays that like it's really difficult to make split pushing work. Maybe that's not as true anymore. Maybe with like grubbies and stuff now, maybe split pushing is way more viable. Tristana can take down towers. I didn't really have faith when they were doing it, and I thought even though they got like a 2K gold swing, so I think FlyQuest was up 2K, and TL ended up being up like 500 gold after they traded Soul for the towers and the inhib. I thought that was still an advantage in my books. It was still an advantage to FlyQuest. Now, obviously, it was definitely an advantage once we saw them team fight. But at that point in the game, even if TL decides we're going to stick to the split push, I still favor the trade up from the side of FlyQuest. Do you agree or disagree with that? Am I
I
overrating Ocean Soul?
I still agree with it. I just think, like you said, once they committed to giving the Ocean Soul, you then needed to fully commit to the split push game because it was pretty obvious
Yeah.
that, I mean, I should say it wasn't obvious. It only became obvious during that mega long team fight that they just didn't
I
have
think it
they
still was
just they
obvious.
just didn't have enough damage to get to the front line. Obviously, they have frontline shredder, like they have a huge frontline shredder in Tristana. Like that champion does an absurd amount of damage in team fights if it's going unchecked. But you saw
Mhm.
Bwipo, like he healed his health bar like 2 times in that fight, and they were just stacking armor out. Like they had double Ninja Tabby, they had Randuins. I think somebody had a Frozen Heart also. Like you just got to a point where the double 80 carries weren't dealing enough damage, and this is like a pretty common thing when you have these sort of team fighting ball comps. You reach a certain point to where all that matters is the team that's dealing more damage. Like it doesn't matter how tanky you are. Like if you're tanky enough but you're dealing damage, the team that has more damage is always going to win. So when you have two pure tanks on the top side and two carries and a support that's not dealing like it's just an enchanter, you're always going to lose out to the comps that have like a top laner that's tanky and doing damage, a jungler that's tanky and doing damage, a mid laner that's doing a lot of damage, and an ADC that's doing a lot of damage. It's just, I don't know.
Those fights were
It
hilarious,
just felt
man.
like TL sort of lost their fundamentals as that game started to break down and devolved into chaos. And I think that's a pretty common thing with Team Liquid is when the game starts to devolve into chaos, that's when the team really struggles. When TL is
They just
played,
struggle after 20 minutes, man. Their late game stinks.
well,
They're
and
having some of the same issues as they did last year and in week one. They don't close out games. I don't. They're great during the laning phase, no problems there. And then when it comes time mid game towards late game, they just fall apart. I don't know. I'm very scared for how they close out games.
I think it's just whenever TL isn't allowed to set the pace of the game or play the game on their own terms, they really struggle. But when they can and they're in control, they're really really good. And I think that's a mark of a team that obviously has a very strong early game, but doesn't necessarily know what to do when playing from behind. So yeah,
I don't want to do a full. Sorry, go ahead.
it's we're just gonna have to wait and see if TL can sort of clean up these types of situations. Like I guess the point that I'm trying to make is we go into next week and we see TL go 2-0 in games where they win the early game, they're up 4,000 gold and they close the game out. Like that's not going to give me any more reassurance that okay, TL's becoming good. I want to see this team maybe pick a bit of a scaling comp, or maybe they end up losing the early game and they come back and win a game. That is going to be a lot more impressive, and it's going to give me a lot more reason to believe in TL than instead of them just winning from ahead, because
So this week
that's the
might be
only
super
thing that
week,
they
by
do
the
pretty
way.
much.
This week might be super weak. They might have 3 games this week.
They do, in fact, yes.
Yeah, so maybe what? Okay, you said if they go 2-0, but they play the same shit, But if they go 3-0,
I mean, like I said, I think it depends on how the games actually play out.
yeah, fair enough. I think you're gonna agree with this. I don't want to do a full power rankings, but like we still have them fourth.
I guess, yeah,
They're still
probably.
top half,
Yeah,
just because there's no one really to take their spot. Like we're not gonna put 100 Thieves there yet, right? The other teams are all
yeah.
1 and 3.
Might be a bit too early to put them there, but I would say the trajectory is favoring 100 Thieves, maybe.
Interesting. Okay. 1 and 3 teams. We got Summoner's Rift, Immortals, and Dignitas.
I
Where
don't know where this Summoner's Rift thing came from, because
SR. When you see SR, don't you actually
I don't.
even Captain Flowers said it on the broadcast this week. Captain Flowers was like, when I see SR, I think Summoner's Rift. So I'm happy he said that because I was like, oh, I'm not crazy.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't
I
see it.
think I think you're the weird one, Jinter.
I guess I'm weird.
Okay, what team we starting with? Are we starting with Shopify?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked to them. We talked about them a little bit already. They obviously had the win against Cloud9, but the unfortunate loss to Immortals, and that's probably a loss that is going to come back to haunt them a little bit, especially when it comes playoff time and looking at playoff seedings, because unfortunately they are towards the bottom of the standings 4 games through the season, sitting at tied for 1 and 3, tied for sixth place effectively. But a loss to a team like Immortals, I think, is going to have heavy implications on the end of the season if they're fighting for the 6-7 type spot, or even just tiebreakers 7-8 5-6, something along the lines of that.
I feel like it felt so disaster for Shopify being 0-3 and then going into Cloud9. Like that 1-3 is so much better than the other 1-3s being that you beat Cloud9. Right? Like that gives a lot of like, okay, let's not judge this team too quick. Yes, we pointed to the mistakes that Cloud9 made in that game, and Cloud9 didn't play that great, and they were picking weird shit, even though I think it was still good weird shit. So there's a bunch of caveats there, but like, eh, I like I'm not. I was very afraid before that Cloud9 game. I was like, oh fuck, we overrated Shopify. They're going to be the team that we always think has a chance to push up into the upper thing and then just finishes dead last. I remember that used to be Immortals before they really became Immortals.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that was what my worry was, and now I'm like, okay, this can be salvaged because you have a Cloud9 game out of the way, and that was a win.
Well, and even despite the 1-3 record, like even in a situation where they would have won the Immortals game and lost to Cloud, like obviously that kind of changes our perception on them, because Immortals is maybe a game they're supposed to win and Cloud9 is a game they're supposed to lose, so they don't have that shine of beating Cloud9. But they've played 3 of the quote unquote top teams in their first 4 games. They've played
Hmm.
Cloud9, they've played Team Liquid, and they've played NRG, or no, sorry, is it FlyQuest? Sorry,
Fly, I
yeah, FlyQuest. I need to
think
make
it's Fly.
sure. I need to make sure I have this right. I'm trying to find their
I think
just.
it's FlyQuest, but I should remember this, but like I can't remember anymore. Um, you wanted to talk about
Yeah,
the
FlyQuest. But yeah, you've played TL, FlyQuest, and Cloud9 in 3 of your first 4 matches. So like you kind of were only expecting maybe to have 1 win at this point, regardless. So while
you
the
wanted
one
to
and three
talk about
record doesn't look great, I would say it was expected, and they're going to have easier matchups to come. So you're
okay,
okay
so
with
we
the
got
one and
the
three record.
dude.
You're
We
okay
got
with the one and
Voy
three.
Boy. We got Voy Boy and Wild Turtle discussion. Obviously B Boy, and then we got the is it actually a detriment to be completely anti-meta? Which one do we want to start with first?
I thought B-Boy looked really good. So I don't know what the whole sort of situation is with Wild Turtle versus B-Boy. We still don't really get any answers as to why Turtle was playing
It
over B-Boy.
It sounded like it was a visa thing.
Oh,
That's
okay.
I don't have that for sure, but, like, when I was listening to I think it was The Dive or something, that's what it sounded like. But I do feel bad for Turtle a little bit just because I thought Turtle actually looked pretty good even though they lost both their games last week, I still thought Turtle looked pretty good. But, like, if you sign Bvoy, it's because you're intending on playing with Bvoy, and so like I don't mind that they put him in, blah blah blah. But it's just unfortunate that like this is kind of what happened last year with Insanity and Ruby?
Ruby.
Ruby.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it feels like this team can't really get away from that. They got visa issues still affecting teams in the LCS in 2024. Unbelievable.
Well, at least B-Boy's really good. So you're not the same exact situation where you have Insanity on the back burner and then you bring in Ruby, but Insanity's playing really well, so you don't need Ruby. And in this case, you had Turtle, who looked pretty good. B-Boy comes in, looks even better. So
Yeah,
it's a good sign. Again, even in the loss to Immortals, B-Boy looked really good.
and you also wanted to talk about the picks that they're picking. Picks that they're picking. I shouldn't have said it that way, but you asked the question to be yesterday. Is it a detriment to be completely anti-meta? So I want to know what you think about that.
Yeah, I just it's an interesting question when you think about it because obviously one of the positive points to being sort of anti-meta or whipping out these very anti-meta picks is both the team who's picking the unconventional pick has experience playing it because they're obviously the ones who are picking it, but obviously the other team doesn't have a lot of experience playing against it, so it kind of gives you that advantage of whatever matchup you might be playing. But at the same time, I do wonder, considering that Revan has publicly stated, Revan being the Shopify head coach, Revan's publicly stated that they're going to keep picking a bunch of wild shit and it's something that's going to be like akin to their team. Like that's going to be their style. And I just wonder if that
Sounds good.
means that, well, I just wonder if that means you're going to sort of be spreading yourself too thin of trying to practice all these various champions compositions. And that might sort of remove you from honing one or two specific strategies that you get really, really good on. And I've never necessarily been a fan of up taking that approach to where, hey, we're going to learn these specific styles and only these styles, going to be really good at them. And that's what's going to make us really good because that can easily get countered in the future if teams recognize that, hey, this team can only do this. If we ban it out or play against it this way, then this team is terrible. But at the same time, you play too many different things, try to be doing too much. And I think in a certain sense, it might end up hurting the team. But I'm not exactly sure where that stands, and I think we'll still have to see a little bit in the future to how crazy Shopify gets, especially in the mid lane, just because Insanity, pretty much his entire LCS career has been a, I don't even know what the right terminology is here. Like he picks a lot of unique champions on a split to split or year to year basis. Like he's not
He's a
just
chef.
playing, yeah, he's not just playing the same thing over and over. He's picking whatever he wants. He's cooking up whatever he wants.
So my take on it, my take has kind of always been I like people playing their own style, and I know that's so like God, that's so cliche to say. Just play your own style. We say that every year, especially at Worlds. But like, I do like that idea. I think that's always been my opinion on it. I will also say that there might be more of an edge to if your style has something that gets buffed in the patch. Like maybe that's even better now that we're playing on live patch because I guess you're more like you're willing to pay a bunch of different stuff. Well, if that's your
Yeah.
style of doing that, then the patches might work to your advantage
I mean,
that
there
things are
is
changing
there
so
is a
quickly, right?
skill in picking up new champions and new styles and
Right.
bringing them out onto the stage quickly and getting positively rewarded from that. So I would say in that sense, it definitely is a good thing, kind of coinciding with the live patch.
Yeah, I'm willing to be told I'm wrong, but I err on the side of like I like playing unique, different stuff. I think I'm a big fan of that. And honestly, sort of similar to the 100 Thieves side of thing, where it's like I don't know if I have a bunch of faith in this team just because of how they started off 0-3 and looked really not good in most of the games. Um, I feel similar to 100 Thieves, where it's like I don't care. I love watching this team. I like watching them play a bunch of different random crap. Good enough for me. So it's like even if I don't have faith that they're gonna make a playoff run or anything like that as of right now, I still have lots of fun watching this team. So like, let's fucking go.
They are definitely fun to watch. That is a given.
Yeah, yeah. I guess one player to talk about that just came off the top of my head is I do expect a little bit more out of Zazel. A lot of
Really, I
the
thought
rel
Zazel's been
game
pretty good.
the rel game to me, it felt like they were never able to get ultimates to engage, and maybe that's partially on the team. Like that might engages are a team thing, is people getting set up and then engaging. It felt like a lot of the rel was very reactionary, just trying to peel your teammates. So like maybe you could argue that too much of his teammates are getting picked off, and he has to use his abilities defensively rather than offensively. I do think that if you got a guy playing rel, you need to find some fucking fights, and we didn't really find a lot of them from the side of Shopify. So like yeah, I'm expecting more out of Zazel still. I think he'll be better.
Yeah, I mean, not to do a whole deep dive on that game, but I was more disappointed in the Nocturne performance from Boogie than I was with Zazel in that
Mm.
game.
And
Boogie,
Boogie popped
I've
off on Lilia the other game, right?
yeah,
One good one, one bad.
he had a good game against Cloud9, but I expect more from Boogie. Boogie will be better in the remainder of the split.
Okay, and then we got Immortals and Dig. I kind of want to throw Dig in the 100 Thieves aggro discussion just because that game itself, like I mentioned, how 100 Thieves would just kept fighting, kept fighting, kept fighting. Dignitas was going blow for blow in that game with them as well. So like another team that's
Rich,
super
baby.
aggro, we're gonna fight. Like, dude, there's so many like. There's less teams this year, but I feel like there's so many teams to be a fan of because just the way they play is fun to watch.
Rich was popping off on the poppy. It
Yeah,
was
Fridge
sad.
Poppy was great.
Rich deserved to win that game.
XU Vi is perma. If flashes up, he's Q flashing someone. He's going into fight. Like, let's fucking go. The one thing that always worries me a lot when you have young rookies is people that are too afraid to make a mistake. Right? That's something we've heard many people talk about before. These guys are not afraid to make mistakes, and that's fucking awesome. I love it.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really think about that point, but I would agree with you that it is a good thing. He's not afraid to look for those types of engages, but I will, similar to the quid point I was making earlier, I would like to see a bit of a more calculated approach into how you're engaging as opposed to just engaging.
Yeah,
Because
going in wall.
because as you mentioned, basically any time that he had his Q and or flash up, he was using it to go in.
What a beast. I also thought their bot lane looked pretty good. I didn't really have much hopes out of Tomo or Isles coming into the year, but like I don't know. I guess more specifically Tomo, I thought looked pretty good.
Yeah,
The Jin game.
Tomo's still solid. Isles, I don't know. I don't hard to have much of an opinion on him. I thought
My
it
eyes were
was
mostly on Tomo on the Jin in the Jin gameplay area.
yeah. I mean, I thought Isles was kind of terrible on the Ash, but I'm not. I've not been a fan of Ash at all whatsoever from what we've seen of it so far. So maybe I'm just an anti-Ash
But Huki
person.
played Ash.
I mean, still, I don't like to pick. But
Yeah, fair enough. What about Immortals? Maybe not as bad as you thought they were,
yeah,
or are they
honestly,
still
looking
dog
better,
shit?
there was easily a world where they should have gone 2-0. They should have beat Team Liquid. It was possible that was going to happen.
Agreed. Do we think that the bot lane or not the bot lane, the solo lanes did enough to um save themselves, I guess. There were like early like those solo lanes were just asking to get criticism from everyone just
It
because they're
was
imports and everyone
yeah.
are like, who are these imports? Are kind of random. Like fan sentiment is always going to be so quick to jump on someone not playing well when they're like an import that it just feels like a random player. But it felt like they actually had a pretty good weekend, kind of salvaged um week one. Week one was not so great. Week two a lot better.
It was a good start to changing the narrative that seems to have already been formed around both Castle and Mask and how they're just a waste of an import slot and like, oh, you could have, used those spots for developing younger talent or even got better imports than these two unknown guys because they're for the most part relatively unknown. However, Castle I thought had a really good week. I thought Castle had two really good games. Mask had a fantastic Jace game. Not as good on the Azir, but still I would say solid nonetheless. So we're on the up with Immortals, which is not something that I was prepared to say going into this week because I thought this team was. I thought they basically had eighth place locked up all to themselves, but I don't know if that's the case anymore.
Yeah, there's kind of a brawl at the bottom, which
And I
actually
even mentioned how we
is
got to throw
interesting.
their bot lane some love because Tackle and Ole also didn't look too horrible.
Yeah. I liked the Bard. Big fan of the Bard. Um,
Not as much so for this crit Ezreal that we saw. That was a bit. Don't know about crit Ezreal, but I don't think that's it.
what else did Tactical play? Did he play a Jin game or is that last week?
He played a Jin and Ezreal.
Oh yeah, he was sniping some people.
Yeah, that was in the Shopify game.
Yeah. Yeah, that game honestly, I really like. So we mentioned the solo lanes. The solo lanes permanently had Prio and were helping Armeo invade with the Lilia, and his Lilia was popping off. That was actually a really good game out of Immortals, and like I do think there's something to be said all about all the bottom teams where it's like, okay, maybe they're not going to make a playoff run, but I could see these games being interesting at the very least. So, and there's no one that's like pure dog shit trash. You're not winning any games. At least not that stands out so far, anyways.
Yeah, I yeah, I would agree with that.
So so far so good. One more question before we move on to predictions. I wanted to talk about pauses, not because pauses are fun, but I don't like pauses happening in the middle of team fights. I think that should not be allowed. What do you think about that? I think you disagree, right? Or no?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely should be allowed to pause in the middle of a fight, especially if an actual like bug or something like that goes on, because I just think from the from the viewer and like the public's perspective, I feel like it's always bad look when a team loses a team fight and then calls for the pause. And maybe that sometimes it's just the case of some bug
Really?
happens where they lose the team fight and then it's like at the end of the team fight, so then they cause the pause. But I think even players themselves have said this in interviews that they are encouraged to pause whenever they like the moment they think a bug happens. Like that's something that the LCS refs, or I don't know, maybe not exactly the refs themselves, but they have been told by the, I guess, the people who run the league, that they should pause when the bug itself happens and not like wait any period of time after for a game to be in a lulled state to then call a pause.
I see. I think that's so silly because team fights are meant to be like quick reaction, not like, oh, let's pause and let me think for 5 minutes about what I should do next. Like team fights are supposed to be very reactionary, very
But,
think on your
but
feet
people
type
aren't
deal.
pausing just to pause. They're pausing because they think an issue has gone on in the game.
Right. Right. But if there is in fact an issue that happened, you can still resolve it after the team fight. Like, oh, we lost that team fight because of a bug. They're still they'll whatever it, they'll chrono break it. And like then you play on. Like to me, fights are just not meant to be paused. So I don't like the fact that just wait another 30 seconds, not even 30 seconds. It's usually like 10 seconds and then pause. Like, I don't know. I don't like team fights being broken up because of pauses. Just if you see something that looked weird, keep playing it out, do the rest of the fight, pause. That's the way I look at it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say just only because they've come out and players have come out and said that they are encouraged to pause right away when they think something has gone wrong in the game and not to wait any additional time for
I
anything
never
to
heard anything
resolve in the
about
game.
that.
They've
I didn't know that.
trying to. This was said pretty recently. I'm sure, like not recently being this year, but maybe it was like maybe it was sometime last year or 2 years ago when like Fnatic pause became like a bit of a meme. I'm not I'm
Hmm.
not I'm not sure exactly, but I want to say it was 1 to 2 years ago when there was like a lot of talk about pauses that were going on, and a lot of players came out and said that they are told by like league officials to pause immediately when they think something is going wrong in the game.
Uh,
And
you
unfortunately,
can
if
get
that
so
if
much
that
information by playing out a team fight, but like you can get so much information by pausing. Sorry, I'm just reading the live chat for those that are wondering. You can get so much information by pausing a team fight. So I would argue the opposite. You can get so much information that you shouldn't have when the team fight is paused in the middle. Whereas, like, if you play out a whole team fight and there needs to be a pause afterwards because there's an actual issue, then you go back and play it again and avoid that issue. I don't
Yeah, but
know.
I think it's also, but you also got to consider the situations of, well, nothing has actually gone wrong, so we
Yeah, if
shouldn't.
nothing goes wrong, then the team fight happened without any pauses, and so that didn't influence the rest of the thing. If nothing went wrong, good. You waited for the whole team fight to not be broken up in the middle of it.
I mean, I guess, but I think there's something to be said just from like the mental aspect of it. Is if you think that like something actually went wrong, like if you think you lost the fight because something went wrong, that's a lot different from like just losing the fight because nothing actually happened. Like I would rather, I think, just from a player perspective, I would rather, like if I pause the game as a player thinking, hey, something just bugged out on my game, I would rather pause immediately, know that that either was or wasn't an issue, then finish the team fight, as opposed to fighting out an entire team fight, then after the fact questioning, did something go wrong, or am I like something actually go wrong, or did I just misplay or something like that? So I don't
Hmm.
know.
Interesting.
I still think from the player perspective, it's still you need to pause when you pause. Like if you have to pause the game.
Fair enough. We'll agree to disagree. Anything else on that, or do we want to get predictions?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I can't think of we. Yeah, I'm trying to think of any other thoughts that I had on the games this weekend. But I think that was it. And actually, one last thing that I will say, because I was at the time I was a little bit cold before the season started on the whole live patch thing. But
Hmm.
I think I'm coming around on it a little bit. And maybe I'm not exactly. Maybe we're sort of waiting for the moment where we get something similar to 14.1, where there's something very abusable like double support item, and that just becomes rampant in that week of the game. And that's going to be a situation where I'll probably argue that I don't like the live patch because that stuff normally gets hot fixed or patched out very quickly in the middle of the patch. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just like waiting for something like that to happen to change my opinion. But from what I've seen so far, I do like the live patch, both it actually being, the way that they run the league, and also the little bit of marketing that they're doing around it. Like when the Vayne got picked, it's like, "Whoa, LCS live patch banger." Like, that was actually kind of funny.
Yeah, I think that is fun too. I agree with all that. Okay, let's get into the week 3 game predictions.
Yeah, I've just come to realize there's going to be a bit of slight scuff here, but shouldn't be.
Unbelievable. JNT 250.
Yeah,
What
sorry.
do you even do around here?
Not a whole lot, honestly. I kind of just
That is cap. For people wondering, JNT does a fucking lot. That's why I'm giving him a hard time.
bear with me. I need 2 more seconds. The scuff is being.
I guess while you're doing that, just one thing that Benjamin says in the live chat says replaying a team fight and getting a different result can feel so much worse. That I can acknowledge. Like I think that is there's some truth to that.
Okay.
That's something that I think is fair.
Slightly scuffed, but don't worry, we move. As you can notice from the records, I'm 11-5. Blue Jay is 9-7. Blue Jay had a very rough day 2 of week 2 where he went 0-4. Just had to point that out.
I made a prediction with my balls. I'm not
That's
ashamed.
no, no, that's sometimes that happens.
And no one can ever say that I don't take an underdog because I took the underdog of the year so far. The only thing that would
And
be
it
bigger is
almost
if
paid
it's
off.
like
It almost paid off.
true. The only thing that would be bigger is if I take like Immortals against Cloud9, for example, which is the first
And
game.
and
And I will absolutely not do that. Cloud9, Cloud9.
I'm going Cloud9 as well. Next up, Team Liquid versus NRG. I'm gonna go with NRG.
NRG for sure.
Dig versus Shopify. This is a
Ooh,
shame
tough
here
one.
because I like Rich and I like Insanity. I
I don't know who the
think
hell to pick.
I'm gonna go with Shopify. I'm
Dig
gonna go
or
with Shopify.
Shopify?
I'm praying for Fake God that he doesn't get rolled by Rich.
Um, yeah, what the hell? I'll take Dig. I don't want to have all the same picks. This was one where I could go either way, so I'll take Dig.
And then last up, FlyQuest versus. Oh yeah, sorry. You kind of mentioned this earlier. This is Super Week. This is Friday. I might have said Saturday at the beginning, but this is Friday, in fact. Super Week.
Hmm.
Last game on
Yeah.
Friday, FlyQuest versus 100 Thieves. I'm going to go FlyQuest.
FlyQuest.
Excuse the scuff. Next up, first match Saturday, Team Liquid versus Dignitas. I'm going Team Liquid.
Liquid versus Dig. Yeah, definitely got to go TL.
Second, FlyQuest versus Cloud9. Presumably going to be a battle of the 4-1 teams, probably potentially for sole possession of first place. I'm going to go with Cloud9.
I mean, if there's a test for the FlyQuest bot lane that we were talking about, this might be it. Like maybe Cloud9 like hasn't been like the best bot lane in the league, but they've been super fucking aggro. They are fighting. Like Vulcan is flashing in with Renata handshake perma. So look out, FlyQuest, Cloud9.
Next up, Immortals versus 100 Thieves. Despite the Immortals hype we've been giving them,
I'm gonna go Immortals. We're gonna do different ones here.
I'm going 100 Thieves, yes.
Okay, and then NRG and Shopify at the end. NRG.
NRG, yes. And then Sunday now, first match FlyQuest versus Dignitas. I'm going FlyQuest. Damn, I just realized I have Rich and my boy going 0-3 this week. Very sad.
Yep, FlyQuest.
Next up, Team Liquid versus Cloud9. Cloud9 got a bit of a prove it week for them right here. But I'm still going
Prove
Cloud9.
you deserve the hype. Yeah, Cloud9 needs to win this game. If Cloud9 doesn't beat TL, um, well, it's not like TL's like a super bad team or anything, but like you start to lose that. Oh, this team is definitely winning everything status. If you start to lose more than
Yeah.
one fluky little game, you know. Anyways, Cloud9.
Next up, 100 Thieves versus Shopify. Oh, this is a close one.
I I'm gonna go Shopify.
Oh, man. I have no idea, honestly.
Decisions. You really think Insanity's gonna lose to
Oh,
Quid?
true. I mean, but the thing is, like, Insanity he might try something too spicy and then, like, lose.
Or he'll fucking cook with Graves in the mid lane.
Yeah, man. Mostly I'm thinking about is just like the top side of 100 Thieves has been very impressive. And I think the top side of Shopify has been pretty
River's
underwhelming
gonna
to start
outplay
the split.
Boogie.
I mean, yeah, I'm going to go 100 Thieves.
Boogie.
It's close.
Okay.
Like a coin
And
flip for
then
me, basically.
NRG Immortals were both going NRG for sure.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Let's do quick news.
Yeah, we got a little bit of quick news, not too much. First up, there was a couple instances of win trading potentially slash throwing in pro games. Obviously, we talked about a bunch of these incidences previously on the podcast, but this week there was two separate ones that popped up on the Reddit where people were kind of just questioning: is there something dirty going on in these pro games? So first up, there was a game in the Ultraliga, which is the Polish league that plays in the EMEA Masters circuit, where two players were suspended for 2 games from the league, with a further investigation pending due to some suspicious gameplay that was going on. And after some further research, the two players that ended up getting suspended were Chinese players who have obviously there's been a big link in the past to Chinese players and there being some like win trading slash throwing going on. So more than likely they were probably throwing.
I just want to clarify. Have they yet been like found guilty or whatever term
No,
you want
not
to use?
yet. They
Okay.
were suspended like instantly for 2 games because like they pulled up like the rules section and like in the actual rules it says like all players must be trying to win the game at all times, and they basically made the assumption that like these guys weren't trying to win because if you look at the clips, they were not trying to win the game at all.
Dude, my take is super boring on this, but like, don't do that, man. Why do these like this actually happens so often? Like, it feels like every year there's a new win trade or int or whatever. Like, stop doing that. Why do you even play the game? Like,
Yeah,
they must be making fucking bank off of these win trades. They must have somebody who put like a boatload of money on these games or something. Like, I don't. It makes no fucking sense to me if that's not the case.
yeah, and then there was another one in the LCO, which it was it's not necessarily a similar situation, but there was an instance where they were going for some all-in level one. This support player gets out with 1 HP, and then instead of basing, runs and sprints directly into the enemy team and dies, gives up first blood. So wasn't necessarily egregious as the previous one. However, people were kind of wondering if it was like one of those ones where you bet on who's going to get first blooded or like which team is going to get first blood and he just runs it down for that purpose. So maybe a smaller version of what happened in this Ultra Liga situation, but I think if you watch the clips, look just as bad.
Hmm. Okay. What's next?
Next up was we kind of got our first taste of some of the international streamers that were going to be co-streaming the LCS, and Caedrel got permission to do LCS co-streaming this week. Didn't actually end up watching any of it because I am normally watching the Double F Media sneaky co-streams, but
Mhm.
good that Caedrel is streaming or co-streaming LCS in the first place and just getting more eyeballs on it because presumably
Yeah.
the majority of his viewers are going to be EU viewers. And from what I understand, he basically just did like LEC co-streaming right into LCS co-streaming. So a lot of those potential EU viewers that may not necessarily be sticking around for LCS were watching LCS, and that's only a good thing.
I'm curious if he's watching the whole broadcast because theoretically, it- I don't want to make it sound like it's easy to co-stream multiple leagues. That's obviously going to take a lot, but it's easier than it would have been in the past because there's not 5 games happening anymore, and the last game pretty much always has immortals in it. So like, I could see him being like, "I'll just stream 3 games.
I
I'll co-stream
think
the next three."
on Sunday, I believe he only did 2 games because the last
Okay, or that.
LEC game was overlapping with else like it was the Carmine Corp game. It was the last game of LEC, which then he then missed the first game, which I think was the NR the 100 Thieves Dig game. And then he started with the Cloud9 Shopify game, then watched FlyQuest versus NRG, and then didn't watch the last Immortals game.
Dude, this is almost bad news for me because I fucking love Caedrel, and now I gotta decide between regular broadcast, the TriCast with Sneaky Meteos Double Lift, and Caedrel's coaster. Like, dude, I'm gonna want to watch all of these. This is like I don't want to have to make tough decisions. I'm not good at making decisions.
As long as there's more eyes on the LCS, doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, it's a good thing. Like I'm not. When I say this could be a bad thing, I'm kind of just joking. Like it's obviously awesome. I fucking love Caedrel. I wish Caedrel would just join the TriCast, and we got a quadcast. That would be fucking awesome. But, eventually you get too many cooks in the kitchen, you know?
Yeah, that's why I always like the Meteos Sneaky Doublelift one. Three is the right number.
Hmm.
I do watch I'll watch occasionally some of the I Will Dominate stuff just for like games or regions that I'm not like actually watching the full game for. So I'll kind of just watch like the 10-15 minute summary of the game. But when you get into those situations where there's like 5, 6, 7 people on the call, like bro, I can't even understand what half the people are saying. Like I gotta watch the game.
Okay, and then what else we got for quick news? You added some things that I am unaware
Yeah.
of, I believe.
Next up, there was an interesting tweet that came out from now the former head of socials from TSM, TSM Dunk. I think a lot of people
Right.
just generally know in the scene because he's been around for so long. But basically tweeted out saying that he was let go by TSM now. But something that kind of just added in there as like a bit of an aside in this tweet, but I think is the real talking point around here is he said that there are only 9 employees working at TSM. Employees basically being anyone who's not a pro player, content creator, streamer. There's only 9 actual employees working at TSM right now.
That is wild.
And
That to me, like, that is so crazy because okay, I guess it doesn't mean for sure that TSM isn't gonna join one of the other leagues, like, they could still do that, but, like, if you only have 9 employees left, that doesn't seem like an organization that's ready to join a new esports league and, take off. At least it doesn't seem like that. I don't know. But yeah, when you pointed that out that, like, there's only 9 people left at TSM, it's like, we thought they were dead because they left the LCS. No, now they're, like, dead, dead.
well, they've basically pulled out of all they've pulled out of
Everything.
the majority of the esports titles that they're in now. Like from I know I'm not too well versed in the rest of the esports landscape. That's not League of Legends and Counter Strike basically, but they recently got back into Counter Strike, but they kind of have like a mid tier team. They don't have a top tier team necessarily. They pulled out of League last year, obviously. They pulled out of Dota last year, I think, as well. They pulled out of Rainbow Six last year as well. I think a lot of the Smash players that they previously had under the TSM banner, basically everybody that isn't Leffen, to my understanding, is no longer on there. Uh, don't even know if they were involved with Rocket League or if anything like that's going on anymore. Basically, the only game that they're involved in is like Apex Legends. That's
It's
about it.
weird to it's weird to be an LCS fan and, like, completely forget that TSM exists until a TSM chant happens.
Yeah, those still happen from time to time, which I mean, it's kind of like becoming
It's a
more of
good
like.
meme.
Honestly, as a big Cloud9 fan and as a big TSM hater back in the day, I always hated just the TSM chants, but now
You
I'm
got
like,
triggered by TSM chants?
now it doesn't bother me as much. It's actually a little bit funny, just because like
Yeah,
it's
you
it's like the
should
ghost. It's
love
like
them.
the ghost of TSM, basically.
You should love the TSM chants because I feel like every time you hear those chants, it's not because people are like, "I like TSM." It's like, "Let's cheer this team that's not even fucking here because of how much of meme they became." Like, the the TSM chant meant something different 5 years ago than it means today.
Yeah.
It's not the same. It's the same chant, but it's not the same chant, if you get what I mean.
hmm But
Okay.
yeah, seems that TSM is they're pretty much dead at this point.
Do we wanna update any predictions as to whether TSM is gonna join the LPL or something like that? My prediction was always why would these teams or
Yeah,
why would these leagues want them, but I feel like that's more solidified now. I
I,
might
I
be eating my words.
I guess I guess the only thing that I have to say is like if they didn't join a league now, like like why join one later if they didn't join one now? Like maybe they're waiting for like more of a decline per se to like get a cheaper spot somewhere, but like why would you then be getting into a league or by
Buy the
buying a
dip.
team like that I don't know, tough that's a big decision to make to bank on like buying low and hoping that it's going to, go up again. Like that'd
I
be
agree.
a difficult decision to make, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's kind of funny though.
Yeah. And then last up, we figured we'd do a little bit of LEC talk as the LEC winter regular season has finished up. I know they did the group stage draw. I've yet to see actually what the groups were, so I'm going to see if I can find those real quick.
I was unable to watch the LEC this weekend, had some things happen, but I what I will say is because I was hearing a lot of talk about K Corp before this weekend happened, and how like it's all Targamas's fault. Which don't get me wrong, he is playing like shit too. But I think there's too many people that don't want to flame Bo. I think Bo looks like shit, and I am loving it. I am big time Bo hater, so I'm sorry if you're a Bo fan. I know there's a lot of those out there. I think he looks like shit, and I enjoy watching the K Corp games because of it. Maybe that changed this weekend. I'll have to catch up on the game, but until that happens, I think he is just as much to blame as like that whole team stinks. I think there's way too much focus on this guy or that guy. See, somebody says Bo is smurfing though. No, like to me, not in the first 6 games. Nope, not from what I was watching. That guy was caught out all the time, and like plays where it's like you can't blame anybody else. Like he's just getting picked off.
Maybe I
So
actually have the format. Maybe did they change the format? Because like I'm reading something about the like draws. Like there's no group stage anymore. It seems like they just drew directly into the playoff bracket.
I don't know. I didn't pay attention. I'm behind.
Yeah, I think I've said this before. I'm not as up to date with my LEC this year as even last year. I didn't watch as much LEC as I normally did because for the most part I watched all of LCS and LEC. But I've slowed down on my LEC watching. But it seems like they have changed the format. There's no
I
more group stages. They're just directly into a playoff bracket.
I do want to. Somebody pointed out like the comms video because I have seen the comms videos, and like I do think there's something to be said about like Bo's making a bunch of calls, and like that is fair. I could give Bo credit for that, because you don't have most of the team isn't talking. The comms were really weird to listen to. So there, I shouldn't pretend like it's all bad, but like a lot of times Bo is dying, and there's no one to blame but himself.
Yeah,
So
one thing I will say about the comms and the notion of, well, Bo is the only one calling. I like it's obviously a good thing that he is trying to proactively look for plays. And actually, maybe the more that I'm saying this, I actually do think that this is a positive for Bo, is that nobody is also telling him to not go in. Like there's nobody seemingly holding him back. Like Bo just seems like the type of player where he's going to be very aggro and look for a lot of fights, and there's no one else who's even attempting to try to call off these plays or say, hey, no, let's not do this, let's do this instead. The pretty much the only other person who's trying to communicate in a meaningful fashion is Upset. So I guess come to think of it, maybe I still actually maybe need to give some more credit to Bo, just because yes, he's maybe inting sometimes because like he's going too far or he's going for these engages where he doesn't have the follow up, but at the same time, like he's really not getting a lot of help or support from his team. And maybe the plays that he is going for aren't the greatest ones, but at the same time, like you got to have some expectation that your team is also going to be able to funnel you some relevant information to either make that decision of, hey, I am going to fight, or hey, I'm not going to fight.
yeah, so I think I agree with all that. The main point that I wanted to get out is that like I think people just don't want to criticize Bo because historically he has been a really good player. I think people just want to point to other guys where to me it's the whole like I said, it's the whole team. They all look bad. Something else I want to read out in Twitch chat, they said, "Do you think it was an infrastructure change for Bo that made him the way he is right now or do you think he was overhyped even in China?" I don't think Bo was ever overhyped. He used to be a really good player. Like up until this year, I had really high thoughts on of Bo as a player. The reason why I'm a Bo hater is because he used to do match fixing. I fucking hate match fixing. That's why I'm a Bo hater, not because he's not a good player. He's a great player. Just this year, I don't see any criticism for Bo, whereas like he's clearly part of the puzzle of like this failure of a team.
Yeah,
So
I
can he turn it around? Yeah, he's been great historically, but like this year he's not. So calling that out.
yeah, he is both part of the problem, but he also will be part of the solution going forward for KC. That's
I
what I do
agree
have
with
with
that
my final
100%.
thoughts.
Still a good player, but like he's not playing well right now. You call that out. Same thing happened with JoJo last year. Same thing happened with Perks sometimes when he was in on Cloud9. Like there's guys that are really good, but they just aren't playing well. And maybe they'll find it later. But when they're not playing well, I'm not gonna pretend they're playing well.
Yeah. And
That's
then
it.
I guess in terms of the rest of the league, honestly, it was kind of the whole regular season was a little bit all over the place, considering there was some teams near the top of the standings that you weren't necessarily expecting to be there. The main one including SK. SK, they got off a pretty good start to the season. Obviously, they didn't end the season as well as they started the season, but the fact that people continue to underrate Niski, I think, is biting some teams in the ass.
I don't need to say anymore. I
You
Yep.
don't. Hey, you're the Niski fanboy here. I don't.
I am the Niski fanboy. He's fucking good. I don't need to do more Niski glazing. People have listened to me talk about how good he is for long enough.
Yeah, I don't know. The LEC's been pretty good so far. I honestly didn't even know that they have this new format now, where it seems that there's no more group stage. There's just like a straight playoff bracket with like a hella big, upper bracket and lower bracket. So interesting to see how that all plays out. But G2's probably the favorite. Like, what the hell are we talking about here?
Hmm. I'll have to watch. I'm so like I feel so disconnected because I didn't watch any this week. I missed a whole third of what's happened so far. I'll have to catch up. That's it for this episode. Yeah.
I believe that is it.
Okay. For those that are in the live chat and that are watching live right now, the episode, if you didn't catch all of it, don't worry. The episode will be uploaded relatively soon. Jinter's usually pretty good at getting that up. Another reminder to subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment. All that stuff is super helpful. Again, we don't know when next episode is going to be. You'll have to maybe join the Discord if you want updates on that. We'll always post in Discord before we go live.
Yeah, Discord
Uh,
is the best place to figure out, when the episodes are coming out and if there is any changes to the schedule or if we're not going to have an episode out for that Sunday night slash Monday morning. So that would, if you're looking for the episodes, Discord's the best place to find out when they're happening, when they're going to be uploaded, and you'll be the first ones to know when they do get posted also.
Yeah, and shout out all the chatters because actually a lot of people chat in this episode. I appreciate the people that aren't too afraid to disagree with me. I think that's cool and all. I like having discussions, especially when people put some interesting things that disagree with me. I like that stuff. So keep that stuff coming, guys. Don't be afraid to criticize us in the comments. We will read them. If you're an asshole, probably not going to reply, but we'll definitely read everything. So that's pretty cool. That is it. This has been episode 150 of the Clown Fiesta podcast. Take care.